Hello and welcome to another patch note video for the Bazaar. We're going to be patching tomorrow, and I figured I'd go ahead and make another video like this where I kind of talk through what's changing and why. So let's jump into it. So critical hits on multi-output items will now trigger for the entire output set. What that means is that for items with two effects, like force field for example, they used to crit per effect. So the damage could crit and then the shield could not crit. And now if an item crits, every effect on the cooldown crits together. So assuming that effect can crit. So just a small systems change. Hopefully that plays better. More like the expected outcome. Level up rewards that provide upgrades now utilize the pedestal system instead of leftmost. This is going to add a click or like an input for people, but we think it's worth it because in the long run this will give us the cleanest UI for showing you what it's going to turn into. Because if you're at the pedestal screen, hovering over anything could show you on the tooltip what it's about to turn into, just like it does with, or just like it will with enchantment screens in the future. I don't think we got that in for this patch though. Gumball machine encounter now supports getting 5 gumballs at a time. Yeah, this one. There's a lot of fan fiction about how Gumball Machine works and what the problem with it is. It's like the truth is we just needed more encounters in the game for a whole bunch of reasons. And we didn't have the technology to do Gumball Machine the way we wanted because it would have required being able to remember inside the encounter how many gumballs you've already bought. And there wasn't any other encounter that worked exactly that way. So it would have required engineering just for the Gumball Machine encounter basically. And so we found a way to do it where it's just a bunch of encounters nested inside of each other. So like it's literally 10 different encounters. You know, you buy one and then it despawns the entire gumball encounter and respawns a new one with the same option to buy a gumball, but one less remaining in the tooltip. And so that's why it's taking a long time. It's not like animations or anything like that. It's just the only way to add it to the game was to have it despawn and respawn the entire option over and over. So we thought we couldn't do selling 5 for that reason. We'd have to like remember inside the encounter how many you'd bought, but I think we found a way to hack this one in. So hopefully that speeds it up a bit, just being able to buy 5 at a time now. Yeah, when you're buying them individually, it's still slower than we want, but it's just not the kind of effect that's used enough to prioritize over other things right now. So we'll get to it when we can, hopefully. Fixed an issue where Pearl's dig site was appearing in the wrong slot during hourly selection. Bug fix on Sylvia. We nerfed Lich a little bit. This guy was like literally unbeatable. He's a little more in line with Infernal and other hard monsters on his day. Should still be basically the hardest monster, just a little more beatable on occasion now. We had to remove Thieves Guild Medallion and Genie Lamp. There were some bugs with how selling it worked. We're going to have lots of effects like this that inject an encounter into your run. But there's going to be a more elegant way to do that with its own visual treatment in the near future here. So until we have the real implementation for these kinds of effects, we're just taking them out right now to avoid some bugs. It was the least painful trade-off. All right, a bunch of Vanessa item changes. So we made this sweeping change with a bunch of passive effects last patch to let them charge instead. And it had a bunch of benefits. For example, it made a lot of passives way more balanceable. It made the upgrades between the tiers feel pretty good and powerful. It let them be more interactable, the cards that work this way, compared to when they didn't have a cooldown. Now they can be slowed and hasted, and they could crit, and they could be frozen. Everything suddenly affected them. So there were a bunch of good things that came out of that. You know, the reality is, though, we didn't want to do it for literally every item in the game. There were some where moving to that kind of change just just felt off with the identity of the card. Even though it helped us address things balance-wise easier, it also kind of solved one of the less important problems, which is balance with complexity, which is like the worst way to solve things. Like we basically doubled the amount of words on a bunch of cards, and if there's more than like 8 words, people's eyes are just going to glaze over. They're not going to read it. So that's part of the issue with it. And even on the balance front, where in the long run this would be helpful, there were a bunch of items that listened to items being used, and now way more item uses were triggering. So this incidentally made a whole bunch of items like that way better, as well as making it easier to loop, although I think that was one of the less egregious issues with this. So yeah, basically we're going to revert the change on a handful of these items where them having a passive just feels fine, or like the better design for it. We are going to keep the changes in some of these items that we did that to, where we let them self-charge, but we're going to keep the charge amount flat between tiers. We tried letting the charge amount increase so the upgrades felt good, but it's a little too much on certain effects. You just can't have them charging 2 or 3. And you could tweak the numbers so they're balanced at the high charge amounts, but then they're unplayable at the lower tiers. So yeah, basically this is one of the bigger changes, is just reverting on a handful of cards, some of the changes from last week, but also just flattening the charge amounts, I think will go a long way. So outside of that, balance wise, one of the changes we're trying in this patch is increasing the power level of bronze items. Like it used to be the case that if a bronze item did 1, the diamond version of that item would do like 4. The diamonds were like 4 times as high in terms of scaling and flat output and everything. We're trying something closer to like 1 to 3, so the power level of the bronze items are stronger. We really bumped the numbers on some of them, and so hopefully this will make early game items feel like more reasonable choices, but we'll see if we overdid it. This runs the risk of like the upgrades feeling weaker between tiers, but overall that's less important than bronze items feeling like usable. So we'll try this out. I think it's a change. It should play well. So but yeah, changing to astrolabe, barrel, blowgun. This is something we were avoiding before, this blowgun type of scaling. This is why it was only diamond tier before. We didn't really want to change the cooldown of items between tiers, because the cooldown of it felt pretty tied into that item's identity. Now, we still had some exceptions where we did that, because it was kind of like the only reasonable thing you could do, like harpoon and stuff. And so we're going to do it in a few places where it makes sense, where it's just the most reasonable thing to scale between tiers. And this should hopefully let us downshift the rarity of some of these items, like in Blowgun's case, which now makes it available at gold. It increases the pool of items earlier in the game. There's more variety earlier in the game and what you can see and draft from. So it should hopefully be a positive change overall. Let's see, a buff to Chum. We're introducing the tech type on this patch. This is a prelude to some more synergy. You're going to see in general just tag creep throughout the game. We want to strike a balance with tags where we're not picking some that are so niche that like super few items use it unless that's intended. Like some are intentionally rare, like dinosaur or whatever. But for the most part, we only want to introduce a type when it's unambiguous. What is that type, and when we can use it enough that we can key certain effects off of it. So tech felt like a good fit. That'll fit a whole swath of items, Unduly especially, but every hero will have some. And so we're looking at some other ones like apparel and some other ones as well. So I think Pygmalion will benefit a lot from these changes and how he plays in the long run. Not necessarily the stuff in this patch, but the tag plans moving forward. So some of that's waiting on new tech on our side too, pun intended. So yep, we got the tech type going in on Silencer. some balance changes. We've got some new enchantment fixes and updated designs going into this patch. As always, enchantments are just going to be this ongoing effort, so you guys should see like pretty much every patch should have some enchantment changes for the foreseeable future. Trebuchet, like it had the right cooldown at bronze, but not the other tiers, so fixing that. Fixing some enchanted versions of eels. I thought we already did this one. Maybe we forgot. Who knows? That's in there now. So Cannonade, we're not going to scale the charge, but we're going to keep it at a flat 2 seconds. Buffing the damage a little bit to compensate. Hopefully that plays well. Some things will still have scaling charge, but not Captain's Wheel anymore. So it's just going to be a flat reduction. We got catfish, dock lines. We're trying to remove some bronze items that just didn't make the scaling on them just didn't make sense. So like dock lines at bronze only hit one item, and just there wasn't much reason to ever take it. So just removing it from the pool altogether there without changing the power of the other tiers makes the most sense there. Incendiary rounds has been reverted, more flavorful the old way as well. Trying to buff Javelin a little bit. We'll see if that's enough. I'd be surprised, but we'll try to change the outliers as we do every patch. Some tech types getting added. Pearl's always going to be charging 1 now. Hopefully that's more in line. Pufferfish, another one of those getting hit with a flat second. One day there will be a patch where we don't change this card, but today is not that day. Trying a new Ramrod design, so it makes more sense hopefully in some builds. We'll see how that one plays. Interested in feedback. Trebuchet's also doing flat charge as well now. Really want to avoid... we don't want to like eliminate loops altogether. It's intended that you can make looping combos. But with fewer items charging for 4 or whatever, it should be a lot less common. Tripwire, we're going to try moving this effect down to gold tier. We also felt like this one was cleaner with just the passive on it instead of doing the charge thing. So we'll see if this is too good, making that effect available at gold. But we'll give it a try. Let's see, Turtle Shell. Some numbers getting changed. Charge amount's going to be flat again now. Water Wheel. We're trying scaling the cooldown on this one between tiers. Like I said, something we were pretty hesitant to do before. We'd rather scale that than the charge amount here, though. So, or the haste amount. So we'll see how that plays. Let's see, Windmill bugged as usual. Hopefully it's all good now. Let's see, a cost bug. The Bushel going to be flat charging now. Caltrops. It's not going to be doing the charge thing. This will just be doing damage on passive. So we also moved this down to gold tier, so we'll see if that's making it too accessible. We'll feel that out. Marbles, I think it's going to be cleaner, just slowing the one item, so it's not creating infinite slow triggers. It's also going to have flat charge, and I believe it doesn't say here, but I think the cooldown also went down to 3 from 4. So hopefully that's that plays better. It's cleaner as it reads too. Okay, Matchbox. This one used to just be a passive, but at burn 1, it was really hard to scale because Pig didn't have any burn support by design. We don't want him to in terms of like the color pie. But it made Matchbox kind of weird in that it's a product with his face on it. It's clearly one of Pygmalion's entrepreneurial products, his Matchbox business. But the item just didn't make sense on its own most of the time, unless you got a ton of burn monster loot somehow. And so I think it having the cooldown is a good change. It lets us sort of dial it in so it's strong in a bunch of his builds and more of a reasonable item. Gives us some other ways to balance it. But yeah, it is more complex. It has a little more text this way. So it's going to be charging just a flat amount now. So we'll see how that plays out. It lets us up the burn more than we otherwise would. Crook, we got to hit this one again. One item shouldn't just win most of the game for you. We don't want to hit it too hard. This is about a 20% nerf at the first 2 tiers. So it should still be enough that it's a pretty dominant weapon mid-game, but it shouldn't just be like get Crook, win game, end of story. So hopefully that's a little bit more in line with where it should be. Model ship, we're gonna keep this one charging. It's gonna be a flat amount though. Fort got a rework. I'm interested to see how this one plays. So it's gonna go up to a 7-second cooldown, and it's gonna shield a bunch. We're gonna have this work more like lethargy, where it's hitting both sides of the board moving forward. So it's gonna slow down everyone's cooldowns. But it's going to give multicast to your slow stuff. So we're trying to introduce more incentives to play items with a high cooldown, because everything else really incentivizes low cooldowns. So this is one of the items that does that more explicitly. It gives them more multicast. We'll see how this one plays. Vineyard Landscraper, we also reworked. These are pretty big hits. We'll see if these are good enough. We're going to keep an eye on these effects. Let us know how these play. It's possible we over nerf these, but they have a bunch of dials to make them more reasonable now, and we're not afraid of reworking those if we have to. So we'll see how those play. Let's see. Some bug fixes with Gumball Machine. Toy is one of those types we've been meaning to add for quite some time. That's going to hit a bunch of items in the game, so keep an eye out for that one. Some small ice cream truck number changes. All right, moving on to Dooley. So, on Pygmalion, for every class, there's a bunch of changes we want to make, but we're just waiting on tech. So, there's not really going to be a point where these classes are like, boom, done, finalized. You guys should see some meaningful changes continually come in. So the Bazaar should always stay fresh, should always be a reason to come back, and you should always be finding stuff for your hero, even if you mostly main one. So we'll see how the upcoming changes to Pygmalion are going to be received, but that's kind of the plan. All right, so duct tape, we're reverting this change. It's super strong to just like spit out an effect on a passive, even if it's like a small amount of shield. But duct tape is pretty necessary to Dooley's early game, playing out the way that we want. It's okay for him to do shielding a little better than other heroes. It is more his thing. So we're going to try reverting this one. I think it just played better. It was simpler. We'll go back to that. Some tooltip fixes, some enchantment fixes. Ballista, I think we accidentally double buffed this last patch, is my guess. Like we had a note to buff it, and then someone did, and then the note was still there, like buffed. I don't know, I'm guessing, but we're going to tone some of the numbers down in this. It should still be a super strong item, maybe too strong, but we'll see. Scaling is way lower, and the charge amount is going to be flat here, although this is possibly still too high. Should maybe be a 1. We'll see. Blast doors getting buffed here, especially in the early game, and the charge amount's going flat. So again, looking to make bronze items be more reasonable. That one should be quite powerful now. Let's see, we got some rays. I don't know about quite powerful. We'll see how it plays, but it's not too far off of like Life Preserver or whatever. Dinosaur and Mamasaur gain the dinosaur type. Talked about that one earlier. Solar Farm is tech now, has some number changes, the flat charge thing. Power Drill, we'd like to see this one seeing more play. So this one's going to be charging too. Hopefully that's enough to have it be good enough, but we'll see. Definitely a big buff there. Carl, going to be flat charging. Railgun is going to key off of tech now rather than raise. So this is one of the a few ways we're using the tag right out of the gate on this patch, so we'll see how that plays. Arc Blaster is also going to be keying off tech now instead of the core. Cool LEDs going to be staying mostly the same. That one is a little too good as just a passive. Hamlet going to have some cooldown changes. It's going to be flat charge now. Makes it more reasonable at bronze. We'll see how it plays overall. Armadillo, Micro Dave all go into flat charge amounts. Tesla coil is going to be tech now rather than a tool, and also it's going to charge for a flat amount. So we'll see how that plays. So companion core, this core has just been generating too many haste triggers in general. Like you shouldn't have one item, especially one that you start with, that just generates, infinite triggers of whatever output without much other effort. And so this change should make it more reasonable. It should generate a lot of haste triggers, but not infinite anymore. And hopefully these haste numbers make sense. But yeah, it is still quite a bit of haste. Maybe it's just too high. We'll see. We're trying to not make the bronze version too much of a brick as well. So hopefully this change is reasonable. We'll see how it plays out. We also have more cores coming for Dooley in the future. So we'll see how that stacks up with the rest of them. Brick Buddy is going to be just as good at bronze, but we want the scaling to be, not like 4x between tiers. He should be more of a good early game option, but won't necessarily scale with you your whole run anymore. Motherboard is going to be tech. A whole bunch of tech tags added. A whole bunch of tool tags removed on the items that we added tech to. Just more. Well, we're trying to make less ambiguous tags, but to some degree, that's always going to be a bit of a question. Is this a tool or whatever? Aren't weapons just tools for murder? Other item changes. So Shiny Octopus is way better. We got a bunch of bugs getting fixed for multi-tool, Void Rays Array finally. Some of this flat charge changed to some of the items. Proboscis is reverted. This one felt more intuitive as just the passive. It was just a cleaner design, so we're just going to go back to that. Weather Machine is going to be tech now, although maybe that one should also be a tool still. We'll see. It is a tool for controlling weather in theory. Let's see, Neurotoxin is reverted. Cryo Sleeve, we're trying to buff it, change it up a little bit. We'll see how that plays. And Venom. So instead of charging, this one's going to scale its poison amount. We've gone ahead and updated skills, a bunch of them. So they should... So here's the thing. A bunch of skills were spitting out effects infinitely. Like they would slow or shield or something an infinite amount of times. And it's probably just too strong in the current paradigm of the game to have any skill doing that, especially at most rarities. It just lets them become a part of a loop like an item would, without taking an item slot. And the intent behind the game is for most of the outputs to be coming from items. We want it to be an item focused game, and the skills should be more supplemental to those items. So we're going to be limiting a bunch of those effects, a bunch of the skills that we're spitting out an effect, to a limited number of uses now. It's still a lot of times, like 5-10 is still quite a bit for a bunch of these, so we'll see how that plays out. Adding a bunch of skills, use limiting a bunch of skills. Let us know how these play, because this is a lot of changes, and we're eager for feedback. Some of them are just balance changes. Some of it is just making stuff available at the right tiers. Some of it is just small nerfs. We'll see if that's enough. But yeah, aside from the numbers changes, a lot of bug fixes, small updates. We're getting some stability stuff into the patch this week, so hopefully that helps with some of the database issues we've been having over the last week that's been bringing the game down. So yeah, overall, should be a good patch. We are optimistic about it. Eager to hear more of your guys' feedback on it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for playing. Until next time, have a good one.